A Navy SEAL? Kid, your mom's probably a world champion keyboard warrior who thinks on-block clip is a term for a YouTube video. The laughter from the assembled FBI trainees was sharp and immediate, echoing off the concrete walls of Hogan's Alley. The boy, Liam, a quiet 17-year-old who looked more at home in a library than the agency's premier tactical training facility, gave no reaction. He simply continued his methodical check of the training pistol, his movements economical and strangely serene amidst the derision. The source of the mockery, a puffed-up instructor named Agent Cross, smirked, enjoying the spectacle. He saw a skinny teenager fumbling with gear, a guest on family day who was in way over his head. But down in the observation deck, behind one-way glass, Academy Director Thorne leaned forward. He didn't see a fumbling kid. He saw a perfect, textbook grip, a squared stance practiced to the point of instinct, and a focus that was unervingly absolute. He saw the ghost of a discipline he hadn't witnessed in years. If you believe that true competence needs no introduction, type proven below. Agent Cross continued his tirade, his voice dripping with condescending authority. Look, son, this isn't some video game. This is Hogan's Alley. We train the best of the best here. We don't have time for fantasies about secret agent parents. Why don't you go get a soda and let the Real professionals handle the hardware? The trainees chuckled again, eager to curry favor with the instructor. Yet Liam remained a statue of calm. His silence was not born of fear or shame. It was a deep, unbreachable quiet, a patient waiting that seemed to suck the energy from the agent's insults. Liam's eyes were fixed on the starting line, his breathing slow and measured, his focus narrowing until the entire world was just the darkened doorway of the mock bank ahead. He wasn't hearing the noise. He was hearing a voice from his memory, a calm and steady voice that had coached him for years in his backyard, a voice that always said the same thing. Tune out the static. See the objective. Execute the mission. This was just another mission. The insults were just static. Agent Cross, mistaking this profound discipline for adolescent awkwardness, just shook his head in theatrical pity, a grave error in judgment that was about to be corrected with devastating precision. All right, hotshot, Cross announced, his sarcasm now a blunt instrument. You want to play? Let's play. He strode over to the control panel and began programming a scenario, his fingers tapping with malicious glee. Hostage situation. Bank lobby. 6 hostiles, 3 civilians. You have 10 seconds from the breach to neutralize all threats. Fail to discriminate, you fail. Take too long, you fail. For reference, he added, projecting his voice for the entire class, the Academy record on this drill is 12.5 seconds. Held by a hostage rescue team operator, it was an impossible standard for a seasoned agent, let alone a teenager. It was a setup designed for public humiliation. But as the range lights dimmed and a single red standby light pulsed in the darkness, Liam didn't look intimidated. He raised the pistol, snapping it to a perfect high-ready position. His posture was flawless, a study in kinetic potential. The world outside his line of sight ceased to exist. There was no arrogant agent, no laughing crowd, only the problem in front of him. His breathing slowed to a whisper, a silent rhythm of preparation passed down as a legacy. The standby light blinked off. A harsh buzzer sounded, and he moved. It was not the frantic rush of an amateur. It was an explosion of brutal efficiency. Liam flowed through the doorway like smoke, his body low, his weapon an extension of his will. 2 shots, a controlled pair, sounded almost as one. The first target, a pop-up hostile by the teller window, dropped. He transitioned, his feet barely seeming to touch the ground. A second hostile emerged from behind a desk, 2 more precise shots to the center mass. He pivoted, his eyes already acquiring the next threat before the second had fallen. A civilian target popped up beside a gunman. His muzzle tracked, held for a microsecond, and then shifted. 2 more shots neutralized the threat without a single stray round. The trainees who had been laughing were now frozen, their mouths agape. Agent Cross's smug grin had dissolved into a mask of pure disbelief. It was a symphony of violence, executed with the cold, dispassionate precision of a grandmaster playing chess. The final hostile appeared behind the hostage. Liam took a single, deep breath, just as he'd been taught, and fired one perfect shot. The hostile target's head snapped back. The hostage target was untouched. Then There was only the deafening sound of silence, broken by the electronic beep of the timer. On the screen, in glowing green numbers, were 4 words: run complete. Time, 87 seconds. A collective, disbelieving gasp swept through the onlookers. No one spoke. Agent Cross stared at the timer, his face pale, his mind refusing to process the numbers. No, no way, he stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. Run it again. There's a glitch in the system, but there was no glitch. On the floor, Liam calmly ejected the magazine, cleared the weapon, and placed it on the designated table, his movements as unhurried as if he had just finished a simple practice drill. It was at that moment that the door from the observation deck opened. Academy Director Thorne stepped out onto the range, his face unreadable. He walked past the stunned trainees and the speechless Agent Cross, his eyes fixed not on the boy, but on someone just entering the facility behind him. A woman in her late 40s, dressed in jeans and a simple jacket, walked in. Her presence was unassuming, her demeanor quiet. She looked at Liam, a hint of a proud smile on her face. You remembered to control your breathing, she said softly. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. Her voice was calm, but it carried an authority that instantly commanded the room. Director Thorne stopped a respectful 10 feet from her, his posture straightening into a formal rigidity that no one on his staff had ever seen. A flicker of recognition, of profound and absolute respect, lit his eyes. Morgan, he said, his voice low and reverent. I should have known. Nobody else teaches that kind of trigger discipline. He turned his head slightly, his gaze falling upon Agent Cross with the weight of an anvil. The 2 large, powerfully built men who had entered silently behind the woman, flanking her at a subtle distance, now made sense. They didn't stand like agents. They stood like operators, their quiet vigilance a palpable force field. Agent Cross, Thorne began, his voice dangerously calm. You asked this boy who his mother was. He gestured toward the woman. You are looking at Chief Warrant Officer 5 Anya Morgan, retired. And for your edification, on-block clip is a term for the preloaded ammunition block used in the M210 enhanced sniper rifle, a weapon she used to hold the longest confirmed combat shot for over a decade. The very hostage rescue doctrine you are certified to teach. She wrote half of it after the incident in Kandahar. Her keyboard was the targeting computer of a drone, and her video game was a 20-year career in a unit whose name you are not cleared to hear. The silence that followed was absolute, heavier and more profound than the quiet after the gunshots. The trainees stared, their faces a mixture of awe and shame. Agent Cross looked as if he'd been physically struck, the blood draining from his face as the full weight of his ignorance crashed down upon him. He had not just insulted a parent. He had mocked a living legend, a quiet professional whose actions had shaped the very world he claimed to be an expert in. Anya Morgan simply gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod to Director Thorne, a silent acknowledgement between 2 seasoned warriors. Her focus was on her son, who now stood beside her. She placed a hand on his shoulder, the gesture a simple, maternal one, yet it carried the weight of a legacy forged in fire and silence. The story of that day spread through Quantico like wildfire. It became known as the Morgan Standard, the paper target from Liam's run, with its single, perfect hostage rescue shot and impossibly tight groupings, was mounted behind glass and hung in the lead instructor's briefing room, a silent, permanent lesson in humility. Weeks later, Agent Cross requested a meeting with Director Thorne. He was a changed man. The swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet intensity. He didn't make excuses. He tendered his resignation. Thorne refused it. Your mistake wasn't arrogance, Cross, the director told him. It was an assumption. You assumed weakness based on appearance. You assumed fantasy based on background. Your penance isn't to leave. It's to stay and to teach every new agent what you learned. Teach them to look for the quiet professional. Teach them that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one you notice last. Cross took the lesson to heart. He became the Academy's most thoughtful instructor, known for pushing his students to see beyond the surface, to value quiet competence over loud confidence. Anya Morgan never returned to Hogan's Alley. She had no need to. Her legacy was already there, living not in a file or a metal case, but in the actions of her son and in the vital, humbling lesson she had bestowed upon an institution that desperately needed it. She continued to live her quiet life, her greatness hidden in plain sight, proven not by words, but by the undeniable evidence of her competence. Years passed, and the story became a foundational piece of Quantico folklore. New classes of trainees would stand before the framed target in the briefing room, and an instructor, often a humbled and wiser Agent Cross, would tell them about the day a quiet teenager and his unassuming mother reminded the entire FBI that skill doesn't boast. It doesn't need to. The story served as a potent vaccine against the disease of assumption. It taught them that respect is not a currency to be demanded, but a debt to be paid to those who have earned it through sacrifice and action. They learned that the world is full of quiet professionals like Anya Morgan, men and women who carry immense burdens and possess extraordinary skills without any need for recognition. They are the silent pillars of a society that often overlooks them, the guardians whose work is felt but rarely seen. They are the proof that true strength isn't about the noise you make, but about the impact you have when the moment of truth arrives. The legend of the Morgan Standard was a testament to a simple, powerful truth. It was a reminder that true legacy is not what is carved in stone, but what is passed down in spirit. It's the discipline instilled in a child, the standard of excellence that elevates an entire organization, the humility that turns a flawed teacher into a wise mentor. Anya Morgan's worth was never in doubt. It was simply waiting for the arrogant to stumble upon it. Her silence was her shield, and her competence was her sword. The lesson for every agent who heard her story was clear: judge no one. Question your assumptions. And always respect the quiet ones, for they are the ones who have done the things others only talk about. They are the ones who know that the loudest voice in the room is often the weakest, and that true strength is measured in precision, in calm, and in the quiet confidence of a job done perfectly. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption and where true strength defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.